I pass out comatose. Altered Ego, 1 blue, 1 green, 2 colorless, X. 0/0 shapeshifter, can't be countered. You may have Altered Ego enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield except it ends with X additional 1/1 counters on it. Hey, that's not bad. So, for 4 mana standalone, you get to clone. Each additional mana you pump into it, it makes it bigger than that clone. You do have to be in blue-green, though. And I don't know if blue-green is great, but it's definitely splashable if you really want to. And clone creatures, especially ones like this, are definitely very, very splashable. I'm going to give this a 3.5. I think Altered Ego is very solid. The mana requirements are constricting, being blue-green, sure, but late game this is huge. Early game you can just copy something that's whatever best on the battlefield. So I'm going to give it 3.5 to Altered Ego. Moving along, Fevered Visions. 1 red, blue, and a colorless enchantment. At the beginning of each player's end step, that player draws a card. If the player is your opponent and has 4 or more cards in hand, Fevered Visions deals 2 damage to him or her. If the player is... So say you cast this on turn 3 and your opponent's only cast 1 card. Right? And they're on the play. So they go land, pass. They draw, they have 7, they have 6, pass. They draw, they have 7, they have 6, they have 5. Then on your turn you cast this card. They draw a card, they have 6, they have 5. So this might, like in a dream scenario, this can probably do like 6 damage. And that's if you cast it on turn 3. But you're also giving that player more cards to just kill you with after you've played a kind of do-nothing enchantment. I'm going to call this card basically Junkerino. I'm going to give this a 1.5. There is a mill deck in this format. I don't know if it's blue-red, and I don't know if you'd even want this card, but maybe. I think this card is just going to be Numot Gross. 1.5, probably a 1.0. Invocation of Saint Traft. Blue, white, and 1 colorless. Enchantment, aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature has, whenever this creature attacks, put a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking, exile that token at end of combat. Problem is, unlike Geist of Saint Traft, this is not giving anything hexproof. Whatever you put this on is going to be the target of every single removal spell ever in the world. If you can back up this enchantment with removal and controlish effects, then yes, it will quickly take over the game, but it really depends on what you play this on, and if your opponent's playing a slower dirtily. I can see this, I mean, obviously this will win games, just because sometimes the opponent can't do anything, or you won't be able to do anything if you're facing it down. But oftentimes it's also going to do nothing. I mean, in a pinch, you can always play it like later in the game just to get in for 4 flying damage out of nowhere. But I don't think this is going to be that great. I'm probably going to give this a 2.0. It's not unplayable, it's just not exciting. Just not exciting. Invocation of Saint Traft 2.0. Oh baby. Olivia, mobilized by war. Red, black, 1 colorless, 3/3 flyer. So a 3/3 flyer for 3 mana. Vampire Knight, so relevant creature type. Excuse me. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may discard a card. If you do, put a 1/1 counter on that creature. It gains haste until end of turn, and it becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. This card is insane, by the way. It's already aggressive. 3/3 flyer for 3 mana is great. The fact that this can turn all of your other creatures big and hasty, all at the cheap cost of discarding card, is insane. And a lot of time you can turn discarding card into an upside with Madness or Graveyard Matters. I fully expect to lose this card many, many times. It's a slam pick in draft. It's probably very splashable and sealed if you can. This is like a 4.5. This is like a 4.5. It just single-handedly wins the game. So, 4.5, Olivia, mobilized by war. Let's go into the next one. Sigarda, Heron's Grace. White, green, 3 colors for a 4/5 flying angel. You, you and other humans, sorry, you and humans you control have hexproof. You can play 2 colorless, exile card from your graveyard, put a 1/1 white human soldier's creature token on the battle. I'm losing my voice again, crap. This card is also insane. I'm going to rate it the same I've rated Avacyn and Olivia. This is easy 4.5. It's a 4/5 flyer for 5. It's giving you and the creatures it produces hexproof in addition to any other human that you already have. Plus, it's going to create an army of itself. Yowza. The problem is it's not splashable, nor are Avacyn and Olivia. They're all either double colored or 2 different colors. That's the only problem with this card, but if you find this card, you will try to splash it if you are already in one of the colors, and you will build around it if it's your first open or whatever. This is nice. Next up, second half of the colorless cards. Anguished Unmaking. Black, white, colorless, instant, exile target non-land permanent. You lose 3 life. This is just a very solid removal spell. Again, the only problem is you have to be in black, white, or you have to be splashing for this card. But it's very, very powerful. Unconditional removal, pretty much. 3 life is steep, but you're always going to play this if you're in black, white. And you might end up splashing for this card just because of how powerful this is. I think this is like a 3.5. I don't think I'm going to give it higher than that because of the colors, but it's very, very good. It's very, very good. 3.5, Anguished Unmaking. The Gitrog Monster. Black, green, 3 colors, 6/6 frog, horror, death touch. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog Monster unless you sacrifice a land. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, and whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. 6/6 death touch for 5. Yes, it does have a downside upkeep cost, but it cycles every turn when you do sacrifice that land, and you can play additional lands every turn. Oh, baby. I don't want to give it the same rating as Avacyn, Sigarda, or Olivia. I think it's a little bit worse, but only slightly. I think this is a 4.25. I think this is like a 4.25. Again, it's not very easily splashable because it's 2 colors. You will splash for it if you're already in one of the colors, but this card is great. It's a huge beater. It's drawing you into new cards. It's just very, very good. Nahiri the Harbinger. White, red, 2 colorless. Planeswalker. Starts with 4 loyalty. +2, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So you may discard a card. You don't have to. You can just plus it if you want to move her +2. -2, exile target enchantment, tapped artifact, or tapped creature. It's strong, but remember, the creature has to be tapped. -8, search your library for an artifact or creature card. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. It gains haste, return to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. I don't think Nahiri is as strong as Jace. I think I gave, Jace a 4.5. I think Nahiri is closer to the power level of like a 3.5 or a 4. She's a Planeswalker. Generally, Planeswalkers are going to be good. She's enabling Madness, and she's digging deeper. She's helping turn on Delirium. She does pseudo-protect herself by killing a tapped permanent of your choice, be it an artifact or a creature. But I don't think she's as strong as some of these other cards. I'm hesitant to give her anything less than a 4, but I think 4 is a safe pick for Nahiri. Splashable, probably if you're in one of the colors, but I wouldn't go out of my way to splash her. I just don't think, as far as Planeswalkers go, she's as good and limited as a lot of the other cards. Alright. Next up, Prized Amalgam. Black, blue, colorless, 3/3 zombie. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it entered from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, return Prized Amalgam from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped at the beginning of the next end step. There are a ton of zombies that enter, or that you can pay mana to return them from your graveyard to the battlefield by discarding additional cards. So this is definitely a build around me card in draft. And if you have the opportunity to open some of those zombies and sealed, then yes, this is fine. You're going to have to be pretty heavily black-blue to want to run this. I don't think this is a card that you splash for. But a 3/3 for 3 is perfectly acceptable. And the upside is big enough that I think this is a decent card in the blue-black zombie decks. In the blue-black zombie decks, I think this is like a 3.5, given you have enough ways to return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. In normal decks, it's probably like a 2.5, right? It's going to be like a 3/3 for 3. Not great, not amazing, but perfectly acceptable. Sorin Grim Nemesis. Black-white, 4 colorless, Planeswalker, 6 loyalty to start. Reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to its converted mana cost. Not bad. -X, Sorin Grim Nemesis deals X damage to target creature or Planeswalker and you gain X life. Not bad. -9, put a number of 1/1 black vampire knight creature tokens with lifelink onto the battlefield equal to the highest life total among all players. Not bad. So this is definitely a great Planeswalker. It's not a 5. Again, the mana cost is super awkward, but it's a card you will definitely splash for if you are playing either black or white. It's expensive, but it immediately can kill a creature with its minus ability, or it can draw you a card and potentially nug the opponent for some damage. This card is very, very solid. I'm happy to give it a 4.5. Again, like 5s have to be insane. 5s have to be goddamn insane. Right? Like Jite 5. It's colorless. It's 2 mana to cast, 2 mana to equip. Goes into every single deck. You can't say that about any of the cards that we've seen here so far. I'm happy to give Sorin a 4.5. I don't think he's a 5. Alright. That ends the multicolor cards. Let's go to the artifacts now. And we start with Corrupted Graphstone. 2 colorless, enters the battlefield tapped. Choose a color of a card in your graveyard. Add 1 mana of that color to your mana pool. This is pretty meh. Unexciting. I'm not going to say much. It's sometimes playable, not great. I'm going to give it a 1.5. Next up, Explosive Apparatus. 1 colorless for an artifact. 3 colorless and tap. Sacrifice Explosive Apparatus. It deals 2 damage to target creature or player. We've seen a lot of these types of effects and cards. Last one was Vial of Dragonfire. If you guys remember, like Aeolipile from way back in the day, this is very, very similar to that. I think it's fine. It's a way to get an artifact in your graveyard. It does have utility. It kills a lot of creatures. And you can even ping the opponent for 2 in a time of need. I'm not going to play more than 1 of these, probably, but I'm happy to just to have 1 in my deck. I'm going to give this a 2.0. Magnifying Glass. 3 colorless artifact. Tap it, add colorless to your mana pool. 4 and tap it, investigate. I think this card is actually okay. I really compare it to Seer's Lantern in the last set. Right, it's a 3 mana ramp that adds colorless, and then later in the game you're just getting value and value with it. I think this is similar to Explosive Apparatus. I wouldn't run more than 1, but I don't think I'm going to ever cut the first, especially in sealed. This is probably an easy 2 or a 2.5. Again, late game it just gets value when you have nothing else to do, but until that point it's not doing that much. Runaway Carriage. 4 colorless, 5/6 artifact creature construct. Trample. When it attacks or blocks, sacrifice it at end of combat. I don't like these type of creatures. It is a great way to get an artifact and a creature into your graveyard, but sacrificing it at end of combat after it attacks or blocks is really, really huge downside. It is a big creature for 4 mana, but I'm not very happy with this. This is like a 1.5. I can definitely see this running this in some decks. I don't think it's unplayable. I just think generally you're not going to want to play it. 1.5 Runaway Carriage. Skeleton Key. 1 mana, 1 colorless, artifact equipment, equipped creature has Skulk. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Equip is 2. As far as equipment go, I think this is on the lower power level of the equipment that we see in this format. Skulk is okay, and the ability of looting is actually quite nice, but I don't think this is that great. It's definitely playable, but it's, again, lower on the equipment scale than most others. I'm going to give this a 1.5. There are times you are going to want to run this, but generally speaking, I don't think this is the card that you're looking for. And the equip cost being 2 puts it a lot lower in my book. Like 1 mana equipment, or rather 1 to equip is great, sure, but this one doesn't even boost the creature's power, which would be awkward with Skulk, sure, but I'm going to give a 1.5 for Skeleton Key. Tamio's Journal, 5 colorless, legendary artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate. Tap, sacrifice 3 clues, search your library for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. In draft, I think this is probably close to unplayable. It doesn't do anything immediately. You get to draw a card for 7 mana at the very best to start things off, unless you already have like 3 clues on the battlefield, and then you can just tutor something immediately, but you could have already just drawn 3 cards. In sealed, even, it's still quite bad. I am going to give this card a 1.5. I think it's probably the same level as like Skeleton Key. Sorry, Tamio's Journal, but you're kind of poop soup. And a 1.5. Blech. LSV gave this a 3.5. I'm not LSV, and I don't think this card is good in draft. In sealed, I think it's definitely better. In draft, I think this card is bad. Wicker Witch. 3 colorless, 3/1 artifact creature. That's it. I will say this about this card. It trades up very well, and it's an easy way to put a artifact and creature into your graveyard. So, it has utility. It's not great. It's better than Tamio's Journal. No, it's probably on the same level as Tamio's Journal. It's like a 1.5. Again, it's best in Delirium decks, or if you need a filler card. I don't like Tamio's Journal. I think it's too slow in draft. And again, it's 7 mana before it ever does anything. Alright. Next, we have Brain in a Jar. 2 colorless, artifact. Pay 1, tap it. Put a charge counter on Brain in a Jar. Then you may cast an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Brain in a Jar from your hand without paying its mana cost. 3 colorless, tap. Remove X charge counters from Brain in a Jar. Scry X. This card is much more constructed viable than it is limited viable. This is like, maybe you play this card? This is like a 1.0, man. This is like a 1.0, and that's being generous. This is just like not playable, honestly. Let's go on to the next one. Epitaph Golem. 5 mana, 5 colorless mana for a 3/5 artifact creature golem. 2 colorless mana, put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. I actually think this is a role player in some of the self-mill decks. And 5 mana for a 3/5 is actually perfectly fine stat-wise. It's not amazing by any means, but it's definitely better than a lot of cards that we've seen. I'm going to give this a 2.0. I'm going to give this a 2.0. Next card, Haunted Cloak. 3 colorless artifact equipment. Equipped creature has Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. The equip cost is only 1, though. You always have to look at equipment that cost 1 to equip. This particular one, I'm not impressed by. Vigilance, Trample, Haste are nice abilities to give, but it's expensive, and I don't know if it does enough. I definitely think it's playable, but I don't think it's a high pick. I'm happy to give this a 2.0. I think you will want this in some decks, and again, the equip being 1 makes it a lot better. You're able to cast a creature and then only equip it to 1 to give it the instant haste, but generally speaking, I don't think it's that good. I don't think it's unplayable. I don't think this is unplayable. I just don't think it's good. Murder's Axe. 4 colorless. Artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2. Equip, discard a card. If you're looking to build the Madness deck and you need more discard outlets, this is a great equipment. Otherwise, it's just okay. Again, it's nothing amazing. It can be a role player. I don't think I'm going to give it a 2.5. I think this is like a 2.0. Again, it's more likely to overperform than any of the other equipments, and in the correct deck, it's probably closer to a 3. But standalone, I think a 2.0 is a fine rating for this. Again, if you have enough Madness cards, this card goes definitely a lot higher because it's free. It's free. It's a free way to discard a card, which means you're almost assuredly going to be able to cast whatever Madness card you want to discard. But generally speaking, you're not always going to be in that position, and discarding a card is a very real downside. Oh no, I certainly agree that this is better than the Vigilance, Haste, Trample. Yes. Which is why a lot of the time it is going to be a 3.0. Next, we have Shard of Broken Glass. 1 colorless. Equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0. And whenever a equipped creature attacks, you may put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. And it's only 1 to equip. I actually think this card is not bad in the Delirium decks. It's cheap. It's cheap to equip. And it has a decent ability, but again, it's not very impressive. +1/+0. It's like a role player in some decks. I think it's definitely worse than any of the other equipment that we've looked at so far. I'm gonna give this a 1.5. Again, it's not completely unplayable. It's just not great. It's just not great. Next card, Slayer's Plate. 3 colorless. Equipped creature gets +4/+2. Whenever a equipped creature dies, if it was a human, put a 1/1 white spirit creature token on with flying onto the battlefield. Equip is 3. These stats are huge on an equipment, and getting added benefits if you're running humans is insane, right? Because if you play this in the human deck, and that human dies, well, now you have a 1/1 flyer to equip +4/+2 onto. It is very expensive to equip, but the stat bonus is huge. I'm going to give this like a 2.5 or a 3.0. I think this is always playable and a lot better in a human-based deck, but being 3 to equip definitely makes it a little bit slower. So Slayer's Plate is going to have probably the best rating so far of any of the equipments, but it's just very dirtily. Second to last here of the artifacts, we have True Faith Sensor. 2 colorless. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has Vigilance, and as long as that creature is a human, it gets +1/+0. An additional +1/+0, and the equip is 2. This one's okay. I think it's middle of the ground as far as the equipment's concerned. I think it's better than the Trample, Vigilance, Haste. I think it's worse than Murderer's Axe. I think it's better than Shards, and I think it's worse than the Slayer's Plate. I'm going to give this like a 2.0. The Vigilance and the power and toughness boost are certainly nice, and if you are running this in your humans deck, you definitely want this, but 2 to equip makes it a little bit scarier, a little bit harder to do, and I think it's just okay. Now obviously if you have any number of those Abyssinian Missionaries, I think they're called, the creature that transforms if it's equipped at end of turn, then yeah, you want to pick up some number of equipment, but overall I think this is like a 2.0. Middle of the road, did I say middle of the ground? Yeah, you know what I meant. Finally, last of the artifacts, we have Wild Field Scarecrow. 3 colorless, 1/4 defender. You may pay 2 colorless and sacrifice it. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal them, and put them in your hand. Then shuffle your library. I think this card is actually pretty decent. It blocks most things around the turns that it comes down. And you get 2 lands when it goes to the graveyard, plus it's putting an artifact and creature in the graveyard. I think you're always going to play this in most of your decks, sealed anyways, and in draft it probably finds a home a lot of the time. I'm going to give this a 2.5. I'm going to give this a 2.5. I think this card is perfectly acceptable and does a lot of work. Alright, now we move to the very last set of cards. We move to the double face cards. Avacyn I already looked at. Abyssinian Missionaries I already looked at. Handwear Militia. Like, I already looked at a few of these cards because I started going down the wrong line. I already looked at the Handwear Militia, I believe, yeah. So We didn't do Town Gossipmonger. 1 white, 1/1. Tap an untapped creature you control. Transform Town Gossipmonger. They transform into Incited Rabble, a 2/3. Attacks each combat if able. You can pay 2 colors to give it +1/+0 until end of turn. Yeah, this is not a card I am entirely happy with, but it is a 1-mana creature that does a lot of work. And you only have to tap an untapped creature. Like, you can play this on turn 1, play a creature on turn 2, and transform it immediately and start beating in. Boop. Boop. You can also do this, like, during combat to trade up and then pump in. Or pump up to trade off to a bigger creature. This is probably a 2 or a 2.5. I'm going to give it a 2.0. I think it's not great, but it definitely has some utilities. We'll go with a 2.0 for the Town Gossipmonger. Next of the transform cards, Daring Sleuth. 1 blue, 1 colorless for a 2/1. When you sacrifice a clue, transform Daring Sleuth. Boop. Bearer of Overwhelming Truths. Turns into a 3/2 prowess. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, investigate. Alright, so standalone, it's a Goblin Piker. And if you transform it by sacrificing a clue, it turns into a 3/2 prowess. The thing is, how early in the game do you expect to transform this? Right? Probably not until like turn 4. In which case, a 3/2 prowess is not going to be that relevant. Yes, if it's able to get in, you're going to get some nice value. But I don't think this is that great. This is probably honestly like a 2.0 level card. Again, it's just going to take a while before you're able to transform it, and the creature doesn't do enough by itself after transforming. I'm going to give Bearer of Overwhelming Truths / Daring Sleuth 2.0. Thing in the Ice. 1 blue, 1 colorless, 0/4 defender, horror. Enters the battlefield with 4 ice counters on it. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, remove an ice counter from Thing in the Ice. Then, if it has no ice counters on it, transform it. Awoken Horror. 7/8, Kraken Horror. When this creature transforms into Awoken Horror, return all non-horror creatures to their owner's control. Or to their owner's hands. Problem is going to be casting this early and removing all of the ice counters. Like, honestly, 4 instants and sorceries are not that easy to do in Limited. It's going to be much easier to transform this in Draft than it is Sealed. The nice thing is, like, as an 0/4, it can just block a lot of stuff, and if you ever do flip this, you basically win the game, which is why I'm going to give this like a 3.0. Because you need a high number of spells, instant or sorcery spells in your deck to reliably transform it. But again, if you do, it just ends the game. And a 0/4 again, not bad. It blocks a lot of stuff. Thing in the Ice. We'll see that in Constructed for sure. Accursed Witch. 1 black, 3 colorless for a 4/2. Okay. Human Shaman. Spells your opponents cast that target it cost 1 less. So, if your opponent is trying to kill it, their spells cost 1 less. When it dies, return it to the battlefield, transform under your control, attached to target opponent. Infectious Curse. It enchants your opponent, remember. Spells you cast that target enchanted player cost 1 less to cast. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Hey, this is actually not that bad. It's a giant cockroach on the flip side, on the front side, and it transforms into a drain 1 every single turn. I think this card is actually quite decent, because this is almost always going to trade, right? They can't just keep taking 4 damage from it, and it's unlikely they're going to have a creature that can just bounce off it indefinitely. And then this adds up. There are ways to remove enchantments, but this adds up over time. I think this is an easy 3.0, maybe even a 3.5. This card does some decent work. Decent work for sure. And now, my baby, Heir of Falconwrath. 1 black, 1 colorless, 2/1 vampire. Discard a card. Transform Heir of Falconwrath. Activate this ability only once each turn. Heir to the Night. 3/2 flyer vampire berserker. This is going to be one of the best uncommons in the set. for limited purposes. It comes down so early, it turns into a 3/2 flyer, and all you have to do is discard a card. And remember, this is a format with madness. We've seen a ton of good madness cards that are in red and in black, which are the vampire colors. I think this card is going to kill a lot of people. I think this card is going to be wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, jam, slam. It's just great. It does everything. It's cheap, it's aggressive, it turns into a evasive beater, and you can turn this into an upside by being able to madness out better cards. This is like a 3.5 or a 4, honestly. No jokes. This is like a 3.5 or a 4. I'm going to give it a 4, just because I want to. Just because I want to. I think Era Falconwrath is that spicy, that good. Oh my god, we have so many transform cards I have to go through. What the fuck? Breakneck Rider, 2 red, 1 colorless for a 3/3. Human Scout Werewolf. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast, transform it. Bam! Neckbreaker, 4/3 werewolf, attacking creatures you control, get +1/+0 and have trample. And then the normal werewolf if 2 spells are cast, yada yada. This card is great. It's already a 3/3 for 3 on the normal side, and if it transforms, it's turning itself into a 5/3 trample with attacking, and it turns all of your other attacking creatures very, very large. The only downside is that it's double red, but otherwise this card is great. I fully expect this card to end many games quickly in this format. I think this is easy 3.5, Breakneck Rider. Moving right along, Gatstaff Arsonist, 1 red, 4 colors for a 5/4. So fine stats on its own. Human Werewolf, the normal Werewolf transform ability, and then it turns into a 6/5 Menace. The Menace is actually huge. This is often going to be a 2-for-1, and if you have any kind of trick, you're just going to blow out your opponent. I think this is one of the better common werewolves. Honestly, I'm going to give this a 2.5. Next up, we have the Kessig Forge Master, 1 red, 1 colorless, 2/1. Whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, it deals 1 damage to that creature. So it's kind of like the Ashmouth Hound. But it's also a transform card, and it transforms into a 3/2. Whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, it deals 2 damage to that creature. So very aggressive, very hard to block early without at least trading away for it. I think this is another very, very solid one. I'm going to give this a 3.0. Another 3.0. Alright. Village Messenger, 1 red for a 1/1 haste. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform it. And it becomes a 2/2 menace. This is probably going to end a lot of games just because if it does transform early, which it will frequently do just because it comes down on turn 1, it's going to be dealing a ton of damage because of the menace. And 2 power is not irrelevant. It's not that great of a card, but I think in the werewolf deck, you will want this. This is like a 2 or a 2.5. 2 or 2.5 IMO. Alright, let me change the webcam again. Good enough. Good enough. Let's go on to the next one. Duskwatch Recruiter, 1 green, 1 colorless, 2/2 Human Warrior Werewolf. You can play a green and 2 colors. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And transform. 3/3 creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. I think this card is actually great because you can play this on turn 2, and unlike a lot of other werewolves where frequently you have something to do on the next turn but you also want to flip it, this one you can play it on turn 2, choose to flip it on transform on your turn 3, but then get some value because you might be able to put a creature from your hand, from your library into your hand. So I think as far as werewolves go, it's already bare, so I think it's above the curve. It's quite good, and on its transform side, it is also very, very solid. I'm happy to give this a 3 or a 3.5, honestly. This is one of the better ones, in my opinion. Yeah, exactly. It's just extreme value on the Duskwatch Recruiter. You guys can't see that text very well, can you? Oh well. Or you guys can't see the ratings very well. Anyway. 1 green, 1 colorless Hinterland Logger, 2/1 Human Werewolf. Transforms into a 4/2 Trample. I expect many games to end to this card, just because people get mana screwed or flooded out or don't have anything to do until turn 4. Like, you play this on turn 2, your opponent doesn't do anything, it transforms, you bash them, you play a trick, you bash them. It's not great, it's a common, but it's perfectly fine filler on curve. I'm going to give this a 2.5. If I change the color to white, I have to do it on all of them, and that's going to take too much time. I think 2.5 is perfectly reasonable for this card. Next up, Sage of Ancient Lore. 1 green, 4 colorless for a star human shaman werewolf. Power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, so it cycles itself immediately and pumps itself, and then in the normal flip. Werewolf of Ancient Hunger. Star Vigilance Trample. Power and toughness are each equal to the total number of cards in all players' hand. And at the beginning of each upkeep, again, if a player casts 2, then it transforms. This card is quite nice. You only get to ever draw a card once, unless you have flicker effects, but it is very splashable. It is a great win condition. This is probably a 3.5 plus. It just does a ton of work. Don't be surprised to lose this card in this environment. Next, we have Arlen Cord, green, red, 2 colorless, Planeswalker. Starts on 3. +1 until end of turn. Up to 1 target creature gets +2/+2 and gains vigilance until end of turn. 0. Put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. Transform Arlen. Arlen, Embraced by the Moon. +1 creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. -3 deals 3 damage to target creature or player and you transform it. -6 you get an emblem with creatures you control. Have haste and tap. This creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. This card is great. Another excellent Planeswalker, another huge win condition, another very splashable card if you're already in either red or green. It protects itself immediately by 0 and then transforms, and then it protects itself the following turn by killing stuff, or you can just bump up your team by giving +1/+1 trample, and if you ever ultimate, that basically just ends the game. Again, I'm not going to give this a 5. It is definitely a 4.5 though. This card is very good. This card is very good. Neglected Heirloom. Colorless. Artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. When equipped creature transforms, transform Neglected Heirloom. Ashmouth Blade. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has first strike. Equip for 3. Damn. Damn. If you're able to transform this card is insane. And it's honestly not awful on its non-transform side, just because it's 1 to equip and it gives a power and stat boost. I'm actually a little bit impressed by this card. I have not learned the number 5 yet. In fact, I'm probably not going to give any 5s this format for limited. I'm going to give this a 3. I don't think it's any higher, but it definitely has huge upside. I'm just going to keep doing this. Woo, woo, woo. Anyways. Westvale Abbey. Add colors to your mana pool. 5, tap, pay 1 life, put a 1/1 white and black human cleric creature token onto the battlefield. 5, tap, sacrifice 5 creatures, transform Westvale Abbey, then untap it. Dun, 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 dun. Normandal Profane Prince. 9/7 demon. Flying lifelink indestructible haste. God damn. This just goes into every deck. And should the game start to prolong any amount, you win. I think this card is great. This might be a 5, actually. This goes into every deck. It produces creatures at the low cost of a life and 5 mana, and if the game's prolonged, that's no cost at all. And it turns into a 9/7 flying lifelink indestructible haste. I'm gonna give this a 5. I'm gonna give this a 5. I'm gonna give this a 5. I didn't even have 5 ready because I didn't expect to give anything a 5, but I forgot that this card's great. This card's great. I had a chance to play with it over the weekend too, and it was as good as advertised. Remember, this is limited, and this card goes into every single deck. I'm giving Westphal Abbey 5/5/5. All right, you got your 5. Let's finish the last half of the transformed cards. I think we already did the Abyssinian Missionaries. You can go watch that on the White review, day 1. Pious Evangel, I think I did this one too, but I will go over it again because I forgot. 1 white, 2 colors for a 2/2 human cleric. When it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. 2 and a tap, sacrifice another permanent, transform Pious Evangel. So you can transform this immediately on the following turn if you'd like to do so. Wayward Disciple, 2/4. Whenever it or another creature you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So remember, this is only considering your creatures. This is not Blood Artist. This is Zulaport Cutthroat. But this is quite good, though. Like, you can just start gaining a bunch of life, or if you transform it, it's a 2/4 that has huge upside. I think this card's very good in the white decks. I'm happy to give this like a 3.0. I'm happy to give this a 3.0. We're gonna have to leave it. Well, I'm leaving it black text. Screw you guys. Leaving it black text. Or black rating. Aberrant Researcher. We already went over that in the blue ones. We already went over Startled Awake. We already went the Geist. We did not go over Elusive Tormentor. This is where I realized, wait, I'm not doing this right. Okay. 2 black, 2 colors, 4/4 Vampire Wizard. Pay 1, discard a card, transform Elusive Tormentor. Turns into Insidious Mist. 0/1 Elemental, Hexproof, Indestructible. It can't block and can't be blocked. Whenever Insidious Mist attacks and isn't blocked, you may pay 2 colorless and a black. If you do, transform it. Bam! Hit him for 4. I think this card is great, by the way. It's a great Madness Enabler. It's a vampire. It's a 4/4 for 4. Like, you don't need to transform this card. If you do, the game has either gummed up and you need to get this through, or they're targeting a removal spell at it, and it's just going to completely neuter the removal spell. Like, this protects itself. It's huge. It has good synergy. This card is great. This is easy 4.0 plus. Easy 4.0 plus. Easy 4.0 plus. I'm a big fan of this card. Next up we have Kindly Stranger. 1 black, 2 colors for a 2/3 human. That's all it is. But if you have Delirium, you can pay a black and 2 colors to transform it. That card is scary. Demon Possessed Witch. 4/3. When you... Wait, what? When this creature transforms into Demon Possessed Witch, you may destroy target creature... What the... This card is gross. It's fine as a 2/3 for 3, but if you have Delirium, it's just the nutter butter. How did I not see this card before? Damn. 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 This is like a 4.0, honestly. This is like a 4.0. This card is great. Wow. Did not realize that it just flipped and killed a creature. Holy guacamole. That thing is nice. Yeah, I'm going to give 4.0 to the Kindly Stranger. I'll be kind. Convicted Killer. 1 red, 2 colors for a 2/2. At the beginning of each upkeep, so just the werewolf ability. Turns into a 4/4. So, Grey Ogre into 4/4. How good is this? It's fine. It's more fillerish than anything. You'll play it. It's like a 2.0. It is like a 2.0. Nothing exciting, but perfectly acceptable. 2.0 for the Convicted Killer. Gyre Reach Bandit. 1 green, 1 red, 2 colorless, 3/2 haste, human rogue werewolf. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform Gyre Reach Bandit. Transforms into a 4/3. Whenever a werewolf enters the battlefield under your control, you may transform it. That's very powerful in the werewolf deck. Like that is extremely powerful, right? And it's a 3/2 haste for 3 already. That turns into a 4/3. This card is pretty dang nice. I'm gonna give this a 3.0. And in the werewolf deck, it is probably closer to a 4. So, Gyre Reach Bandit, look for that in your wolf/werewolf decks. Almost there. We're almost at the end. Skin Invasion. 1 red, enchantment, aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature attacks each combat if able. When enchanted creature dies, return Skin Invasion to the battlefield transformed under your control. 3/4. I actually think this card is quite decent. You can play this on your opponent's creature to make it attack like a chump attack, and then you get to eat it and get a 3/4. Or you can put it on like your 1/1 menace creature that you can sacrifice to Rummage and get a 3/4. I think this card is going to be misplayed quite frequently and misevaluated quite frequently. I think this is probably a 3.0. I think this card is quite decent. Does a lot of work, and a 3/4 is pretty big, and you can get this really, really easily. Skin Invasion 3.0. Autumnal Gloom. 1 green, 2 colorless enchantment. Put the top card of your library into your graveyard for a black. Delirium. If there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, transform it. Turns into a 4/4 trample hexproof. Green-black. I don't know about that as a color combination, but turning this into a 4/4 trample hexproof when you have Delirium is quite nice. It's at the beginning of your end step only, though. It doesn't just continuously check. It's only at the end of your turn. I'm not quite sure how to rate this. I'm going to give it a 2.5 right now, but that's just because I'm actually not sure how to rate this card. Like, 4/4 trample hexproof is very, very large, but this on the front side seems very, very weak. 2.5 is probably too high, but I'm going to stick with it for now. Next up, we have Hermit of the Naturnals. 1 green, 2 colorless for a 2/3. Whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, draw a card. And the normal transform. 3/5, whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, draw 2 cards. So this is quite solid as far as the uncommon werewolves go. It's not great, it's not amazing, but it definitely has utility. It makes it very hard for your opponent to obviously do anything on your turn, unless they want to give you value of some sort. And it turns into a 3/5, which is nothing to laugh at. Perfectly decent, playable in just any green deck anyways. This is probably a 3.0, maybe. No, perfectly content with a 3.0. It's always going to go into your green decks, and sometimes it's just going to completely wreck your opponent. Coming to a close here, Lambholt Pacifist. 1 green, 1 colorless, 3/3, human shaman werewolf. Can't attack unless you control a creature with power 4 or greater. At the beginning of your each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform it. So it's a 3/3 defender, if nothing else. Kind of think of it like the 3/3 from whatever that set with Dragons of Tarkir was. Maybe it was Dragons? Glade something? Glade Sentry? I don't know. Turns into a 4/4 with no downside. I think this card can do a lot of work. And it comes down on turn 2, which makes it really nice. Again, I'm going to give this like a 3.0, maybe a 2.5. Because, again, it can always just block. And when you flip it, it's just a 4-4. 4-4. So, quite solid. Pretty good. Feels nice, man. Solitary Hunter. 1 green, 3 colors, 3-4. That's not bad. Those are good stats, and that's not common. 3-4 for 4 mana is not bad and limited. Human Warrior Werewolf. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform Solitary Hunter. Turns into a 5-6. So, I think this is better one of the better green common werewolves. It's very decently sized for its mana on the front, and it turns into a 5-6 should nobody cast a spell. I'm happy to give this... Actually, I think it's like a 3.0, honestly. I think this card is just very solid. For common, anyways, you're always going to run this in your green deck. Easy. Harvest Hand. 3 colorless, 2/2, artifact creature Scarecrow. When it dies, return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. Transforms into a Scrounged Scythe. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. As long as equipped creature is a human, it has Menace, 2 to equip. This card is just value. Grey Ogre's obviously not great in limited, and it's not going to enable Delirium because it transforms, but it's a 2/2 that turns into an equipment later in the game. I think this is actually very solid. You're probably going to want to play this in most of your decks just because of its utility. I'm happy to also give this a 2.5 or a 3.0. It looks very weak, but it's just value. 2/2 that turns into an equipment that you can use later. Thraben Gargoyle. This is our last card, finally, of the set review of the transform cards. This is a 1 colorless, 2/2 defender, Gargoyle, artifact creature. You can pay 6 colors to transform it, and it turns into a 4/2 flying. I mean, I think this card is actually just fine. You play it early, and it can trade with anything. It's a great way to transform opposing werewolves because it only costs 1, so you're able to cast multiple spells a turn. And later in the game, a 4/2 flyer is a beat stick. I wish it was a 2/3, but that might have been too strong on the front side. But I think you're always going to play like the first of this card. It's probably a 2.5, honestly. Very happy to give this a 2.5. That, my friend.